What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and in this one I'm going to be talking about the SPY, the Nasdaq, the QQQs, and the indices, break down what the charts are telling us and what the news data and technicals are telling us, and what big pieces of data and earnings are coming out very soon that will affect how the market moves. But before I break anything down about this, before I give you guys my price predictions and etc., I do have to mention a couple of things before starting. Firstly, I'm not a financial planner. Make sure you take none of this as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button if you want to see more videos like this. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire community as a whole. And finally, if you guys are interested, please check out the shop down below, either above or below the comments section, depending on the device you're watching this on. I have some custom merch for you guys. If you want to buy a shirt or a hoodie that says "to the moon" or something like that, it really is your choice. It would really help me if you did choose to do it. If not, it's also completely fine with me. But anyways, guys, that's what I have for this one. Now let's actually transition into the charts. Now, looking at SPY, this thing is a little bit in the red right now. In my previous video, I told you I likely saw the market pushing up to either a little above 416 or a little bit below 418. Somewhere there, we have some very strong resistance, and that is actually what caused the market to reject. And then the market rejected. Once again, we got the pop I predicted, and then we got a sell-off after that. So my previous video, was called Pop and Drop, and that's what basically describes today. We got a nice pop halfway through the trading day, then we got a nice sell-off as the hours progressed, closing kind of red for SPY in QQQ and Tesla and Amazon and many other stocks out there. And now the real question is, what's going to happen? Is the market going to try to get a nice bounce, or is the market going to end up selling off even more? And that's going to depend very heavily on the big events coming out. First, I just want to mention that for earnings, we have Uber, AMD, Pfizer, and Ford all reporting earnings tomorrow. Going to be very important, especially AMD. For Wednesday, it's just CVS and a couple of others, nothing too huge. But then Thursday is going to be massive as we have Coinbase, Lyft, Shopify, Aapl, Moderna, and the biggest one is going to be Aapl. Expect a very big reaction after the market closes for the entire stock market and also for Friday. If Aapl does well and the market squeezes, this would actually heavily benefit the market makers because we do have over 1 million puts expiring, or almost 1 million puts expiring for Friday. 410 is max pain, but the put to call ratio is 2.13. Now, if the market does squeeze, the market makers are going to try to destroy these shorts. But if the market ends up dropping, the shorts can take advantage of this as well. So we'll see how the data comes out. Just want to give you guys a heads up for Friday. I also want to note that before the big earnings come out, we have something else that's super huge for the week. That's going to be FOMC in a couple of days. Now, for today, the manufacturing data came out. In the beginning, the PMI report actually caused the market to pump for the first 15 minutes. Then the market sold off sharply after the next 15 minutes. That's because the ISM manufacturing prices were higher than expected, telling us that we could see another increase in inflation. For tomorrow, there's not much data except for some JOLTS job quits and then JOLTS job openings. That's going to be the most important piece of data coming out. Make sure you guys are ready to look at that because we want weakness in the job sector. Anything that's suggested would actually benefit the market. That's what we want to see because it's going to cause the Fed to be less hawkish. For Wednesday, this is going to be one of the biggest days of the week. We have lots of data coming out, but that's not going to be the biggest factor. The biggest factor is going to be the interest rate hike decision. The market's already priced in and it's expecting a 25 basis point rate hike. It's very likely we're going to get that, but then that's not everything, right? That's going to happen at about 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern time. Then at 2:30 p.m., we have the Fed press conference. That's when Jerome Powell is going to be speaking at the meeting. His words shake the entire stock market. Expect crazy volatility and get ready for a wild ride. But until then, right before the big event, we have Tuesday. Tuesday is going to be the last time the market closes until Wednesday comes. Then we have the FOMC meeting intraday, which means tomorrow is when the market's going to likely just be getting ready for it. We're going to see lots of hedging and also a possible sell-off approaching the big event, in my opinion. What do I think is going to happen? Well, if you're bullish on SPY, you need to see this thing hold 416, break above that, then 418 could actually come. If we're bearish on SPY, it needs to continue to break down and retest 415. If 415 fails, it's going to most likely retest the 50 EMA around this like 413 area. And if that fails, we could come all Excuse me, sorry guys. We could come all the way down to 412. Now, what do I predict is going to happen? Well, based off this technical setup, we have a negative divergence developing on SPY right now on the RSI. We also have a bearish crossover on the PPO from the MACD. That suggests to me that it's very likely we're going to see a continuation of the sell-off and more weakening of the price action. Not saying it's going to be that insane, but I am seeing signals of that potentially happening. We're not getting the same signal on the RSI on the normal chart without the extended hours. Because remember, we had this like falling wedge breakout very recently. We're getting rejected off major resistance. But look at the MACD. We're about to get this crossover right here. We're getting lots of weakening momentum. So basically, the market shot up. It was pushing up so hard. But now it's losing steam. It needs to cool off a bit. And this is what it's starting to do. This is telling me that we might see something very similar tomorrow where we try to pop a little bit into the open hours, and then we just start cooling off. And I believe we could actually see this thing get closer to where our 50 EMA is with the extended hours. We could be getting closer to like 414. And if that fails, 412 could also come, but I'm not really counting on it dropping that much. I think we're just going to remain very choppy for a lot of the day, then sell off a little bit more. And we could close a little bit in the red, maybe around 414, if not a little lower. But I am seeing another red day again for the markets as we get closer to the big FOMC meeting. For Tesla, and by the way, for AMC, before I talk about Tesla, just real quick, it's green right now because we have earnings coming out very soon. There tends to be some hype associated with it, but AMC is also going to be dictated by the FOMC meeting and also Apple's earnings. What do I see for it? It's holding up nicely. If we can hold 5.5, we're going to be fine. But if the market sells off tomorrow, it's going to cause AMC to decline a little bit too. So it could also turn red. Anyways, for Tesla, just real quick, if you're bullish on Tesla, it needs to break and hold 163. If it breaks that, we could fill the gap up here around 164. If we're bearish on Tesla, it needs to actually fight for 160. If it fails to hold that, it's going to come down to 158, if not 155. Now, what am I seeing from a technical standpoint? It is actually losing momentum right here on the MACD, but it's also chopping around a lot, which means that there's this balance between bulls and bears in a way where the bulls are kind of defending their positions right here, holding Tesla up, but the bears are also stopping it from being able to break out. So it's very flat, very choppy, and I do see that happening for tomorrow. I'm predicting it's going to be more like bullish in the morning. It's going to do a little better in the morning, depending on the news. It could come back up to about like 163, try to test it, then get rejected, retest like 160 or so, depending on the JOLTS numbers, then just trade sideways, chop around, maybe close a little red around 160, if not even lower than that. But I do see a somewhat red day that's very flat at the same time, nothing too crazy. And then we're going to get the bigger reaction on Wednesday for Tesla. For Coinbase, how was my prediction? I told you guys it's probably going to test 50. And we did actually test 50, right? Very, very similar to what was predicted. They also have earnings in a couple of days. So don't forget, we have Coinbase earnings on Thursday. That's going to impact if this thing actually gets a big bounce or not. But for now, the price action has been more in favor of the bears because it's continuing to make lower highs. Wait, what's that? Lower highs and lower lows. There we go. Continuing to decline, not really a whole lot going on. There's not really much of a divergence forming either. I'm not really seeing any true signs of this thing trying to bounce. I believe it's just going to fight for 50 tomorrow, maybe come a little lower, 48.5 to 46. Just very choppy price action, maybe with another red day, just very flats tomorrow. For the dollar, excuse me, sorry guys, I do apologize for that. For the dollar index, this technically is starting to show some strength. Holding above 102 is a bullish signal. If it keeps pushing up, which is very possible, it might actually try its best to keep going. If it does keep going, this could actually, once again, hurt the stock market, cause more selling pressure. But we also developed a possible bearish divergence on it, but there's no sign of it playing out yet. That's the thing. There's no sign that this thing's ready to start dropping. It could try to push up a little bit more first before it does start to sell off later on if FOMC or Apple earnings cause another pump in the stock market. But for now, what I'm seeing for the dollar is very flat price action. It's still not breaking out very hard. It's still pretty flat, but this could lead to more selling pressure for the markets. For NEO, unfortunately, I don't really like NEO's latest deliveries report. That is part of why NEO is red. I mean, if they gave us a strong deliveries report for the month of April, this thing could have turned pretty green, could have soared above $8. Instead, it failed to do so. And now what I see for the price action is just very choppy price action again. I'm expecting it to try to pop in the morning, retest 8, reject, come all the way back down to like 7.6, maybe even 7.5, bounce off that, and then just close very flat, if not kind of red. But I do want to note that there is a possible divergence that has been developing, a bullish divergence developing for NEO. So maybe NEO ends up getting a bounce. Maybe it sells off a little bit more first and then it gets to bounce later on. Maybe by the FOMC meeting, maybe because of Apple's earnings, maybe because of its earnings, right? They're all coming very, very soon. One of those things is going to cause this thing to bounce, most likely. I just don't know just yet. And for now, there's no confirmation of it bouncing. It's still, once again, on a downtrend, chopping around a lot. And when it comes to their earnings, by the way, why am I saying it's weak? Not their earnings, sorry, deliveries report. It was weak because they're down at 35.9% month over month compared to the previous month. They are green year over year, but that's because the previous year's numbers were really bad because of the lockdowns in China. So it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to even compare us to that time frame. But once again, a bit of a decline despite the fact that Li Auto broke another record. So NEO does have a lot of work to do. For Microsoft, I predicted this thing would once again decline and get closer to about 303. We actually closed around 305, barely in the red. I am anticipating Microsoft is going to trade sideways tomorrow and maybe close a little red, retest 303, maybe bounce there, and once again close just a little bit in the red. Completely fine. It still is holding up all right. At least it's above 300, but I do think it's going to get closer to it. For the QQQ, this has a negative divergence developing. You could see it quite clearly. We also have this bearish crossover on the PPO. I'm seeing something very similar to today where it tries to push up just a little bit, but not as high. Then it continues to decline from here. I'm actually eyeing the 50 EMA, the 320 area. I think the QQQ might test this as soon as tomorrow, but I don't see it crashing well below that. I think it's just going to sell off a bit, try to bounce, remain kind of choppy in the morning, then just sell off and hold. I don't think it's going to be that bad. I think it's going to be somewhere in the red though for a very flat close. And we're just getting ready for the FOMC meeting. The VIX starting to bounce and it's about to turn a little bit more bullish. Maybe the VIX pushes up for about 17. That's where the 50 EMA is. Why? Because the market may decline to cause that. Amazon, I called out a head and shoulders on Amazon. Let me show you what it looked like. It actually played out perfectly. I told you guys, we have a head and shoulders on Amazon. We're getting some sell signals on the QQQ. Amazon would likely come all the way down. My target was about 103 to 102. We closed out at 102.05, exactly as predicted. The head and shoulders played out. So now the question is, what is Amazon going to do going forward? Well, if the market keeps declining, we could see Amazon get closer to about $100, but that's a major support zone. We see lots of demand around that area, so it might try to like hold that zone tomorrow. But I could see it actually trading very flat and closing a little bit in the red, getting closer to about 100. Nvidia is up over 4%, even better than expected. I told you guys Nvidia would try to push up a little bit, maybe try to get to about 280, then reject and come down. Instead, it did not reject, it just kept going and going and going. Chart looks pretty strong for now. However, it's very overbought, and I'm not really seeing much else from there. We could see Nvidia actually cool off a bit as we're getting very closer to some big earnings. It might cool off just a little bit with the market tomorrow and close around 285, but for now, still has some strength to it. It still looks very nice, so I'm not really seeing a whole lot from there. For Aapl, this is also showing some weakness. We have a negative divergence on the RSI, and also the PPO is about to cross over. Aapl might come down to 167 to retest the 50 EMA. When you include the extended hours, something very similar is going on. It's already showing us that Apple's declining. I saw this earlier. We also have a bearish divergence on the RSI, so Aapl might come down to 168 to 167 very soon tomorrow. Just a bit of a sell-off right before FOMC, completely normal. My prediction for Google was, I told you all that Google rejects off 109, so I thought Google would come to 109 and then get rejected and cool off. Instead, it got stopped at 108.68, so very close to 109, my target, super close. I thought it would hit 109 then reject. Instead, it hit 108.68 then rejected. Very similar price action to what I predicted. And tomorrow, Google might just continue to trade sideways and decline a little bit more, getting closer to about 106 flats to 107 around this area, just somewhat in the red. That's what I'm seeing. Meta did a little better than expected. It actually pushed up a little more. Once again, looking nice. But if the market declines tomorrow, we might see Meta come down to about 140 and just trade kind of flat. It has a lot of relative strength to it. We have to be patient with this. There's also a negative divergence developing. There's no sign of it playing out yet, but it could actually decline just a little bit with the market to about 240. Finally, looking at where's my 10-year Treasury yield. Here it is. I told you all that there were two possibilities with this. It could come up to fill this gap. If it did that, the market could turn red. If it keeps going, the market could continue to sell off a bit. And that's what's happening so far. So for tomorrow, I'm seeing another attempt to push up in the morning, choppy price action, and another sell off that could be even worse than today's. I'm seeing some weakening momentum in this market, and I think it would be completely fine to sell off right before FOMC. But if we are selling off before the big events, there's a chance we could bounce after the big meeting. But we have to just wait until it actually starts. But until then, thank you all so much for listening. Have an absolutely incredible rest of the day. Remain calm, cool, and collected, and get ready for tomorrow. It's going to be an interesting day. I'm seeing lots of choppy price action with a bit of a sell off to it. But then, once again, big events and big earnings and etc. will affect how we move going forward. Thank you all for listening. Don't forget about the shop I mentioned around the comment section. If you're interested in buying something, it would really help the channel. If not, I'm always fine with it. So I thank you all. Market to the moon because the long term is bright. And peace out.